Hello, my name is Dr. Karen Kossie-Chernyshev. I'd like to welcome you to And Still We Rise, Black Women Scholars in the Ebony Tower. We wanted to have this conversation because this is a very important time in the history of African Americans and also of historically Black colleges and universities, as Kamala Harris, our vice president, hails from Howard University. Was an undergraduate of Howard University. Her experience as a student and also our heightened awareness of the significance of HBCUs in the training of young African Americans from throughout the country and students, of course, from other communities makes a conversation like this important. We know that for students, Black students in particular, historically Black colleges and universities are a wonderful option in terms of the kind of cultural affirmation that they get from the institutions, the opportunity to see African American men and women in positions of leadership. We also want to think about the HBCU experience from the perspective of faculty members. And we wanted to think specifically about the experiences of Black women. This is the last day of Women's History Month, and so we thought we would spend this last day reflecting on the experiences of African American women, women of African descent who teach at HBCUs. So I'd like to welcome all of our panelists here today. We have a number of women who are from various universities throughout the country, and they are all going to participate as panelists. We also have a presentation that Dr. Gloria Baptiste Roberts is going to introduce students from the Texas Southern University debate team. We also want to thank Dr. Thomas Melanson for holding up the male community at HBCUs. He's going to be giving us a presentation at the end. I'm excited that of attendees, we have 16 universities represented in our audience today. And so we have the chat is available for you to ask questions. And we also want to make sure that you take the poll that will be launched at the end of this rich hour of discussion. Organizers for today's event include myself. I am a historian. I teach at Texas Southern University. My colleague, Dr. Vera Hawkins, who's interim chair of journalism. Our moderator is Dr. Ramona Houston, who did graduate work at the University of Texas. In fact, she's the first African-American female to earn a PhD in the field of history from the University of Texas. She's going to be our moderator. Our guest panelists include Dr. Kalita Nichols Fairfax. She's a fellow at the Honors College at Norfolk State University. Dr. Leslie Tate, she teaches history at Prairie View A&M University. Dr. Francille Rusan Wilson, University of Southern California, who authored a book, Segregated Scholars, and she will be able to give us some background information on what life was like for HBCU faculty before HBCUs were even called HBCUs. Our panelists include Dr. Mashawn Benson, who teaches English at Texas Southern University. Dr. Merlene Petrie, historian who has authored a number of texts. In fact, some of our panelists were holding up her book earlier, her latest book, Born to Serve, which treats the history of Texas Southern University. And I'm hoping that she will share some nuggets from that research as we proceed. Dr. Alvia Wardlaw, who's the director and curator of the Biggers Museum at Texas Southern University. Dr. Edith Wu, she serves as president of the Faculty Senate here at Texas Southern University. She really takes the faculty to heart. She's been working hard for many years at Texas Southern, and she's affiliated with Thurgood Marshall School of Law. She and her colleague, Dr. Faith Jackson, have been doing a lot of great work together, and I'll let them talk about WOJAG when they give their presentation, something that they worked on together and launched. We will have just a brief presentation on 9 laws that protect women in the workplace. We will also have a presentation from Natasha Savage Hubbard. She's from our Title IX office at Texas Southern. And we'll have 2 performances. I've mentioned the members from the TSU debate team led by Dr. Gloria Baptiste Roberts and also Dr. Thomas Melanson with the theater department here at Texas Southern. He's going to grace us with one of his original poems. So I'm going to yield the floor now to Dr. Hawkins so she can tell us a little more about why we're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Karen, you have done a wonderful, wonderful job in putting this together. You brought this project and this idea to me, and I was just delighted to take part in it, but it has grown to include this fabulous array of African-American women scholars. And I'm just so glad to be in this community and to hear more about their journeys. Because one of the things that has been an issue for me in the academy is that I've not had the opportunity to really spend time learning about the journeys of my other sister scholars. We are always in the classroom, and then we have, other areas that we have to work in, but just to hear what their journeys have been. We get so caught up in our own journeys, we don't realize that other sister women scholars are also going through their own situations. And just to have an opportunity to talk about this in a broad context, what are issues that may come up at a HBCU pertaining to our research? And Dr. Petrie, you have just been marvelous at being able to overcome these obstacles, but yet I know that they have been there. How do you rise in the ranks of administration and still hold down all that you need to do in the classroom? And then what about the mental health aspect of it? And then, still be true to our art like Dr. Wardlaw has been. And so I'm just listening to hear my colleagues speak about these issues in a broad context, and then and then to the extent that they may want to share some of their personal experiences, I would definitely be interested in hearing. And ultimately, we hope that the conversation that we start here will lead to some lengthier publications and lengthier presentations in the future, and we'll have more to share about that at the end. So without further ado, I just welcome everyone who's joining us by Zoom and all of the panelists who are here, and I look forward to hearing from each of you, my dear sisters.
Dr. Roberts.
Okay. As a lead into today's conversation about Black women scholars in the Ebony Tower since 1965, the TSU debate team under my direction is honored to present an adapted version of the poem, "And Still I Rise" by Maya Angelou. Our deepest apologies to Dr. Angelou for changing a few words, especially for this occasion. We know that as she sits in her royal position among the ancestors, she smiles. She smiles because of your presence here today. She smiles because she knows that the conversation we are having is important. It is necessary. Maya Williams and Gloria Ikizi, two members of the debate team, will render an adapted version of "And Still I Rise."
Thank you and greetings. And thank you once again for having both of us. This is such an honor to be with you lovely women today. And we hope that you enjoyed this presentation. You may write us down in history with your bitter, twisted lies.
You may trod us in the very dirt, but still like dust will rise.
Does our sassiness upset you? Why are you so beset with gloom?
Because we walk like we've got oil wells pumping in our living room.
Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides.
Just like hope springing high, still will rise.
Do you want to see us broken, bowed head, lower eyes?
Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by our soulful cries. Does our haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, cause we laugh like we've got gold mines dig in our own backyards.
You may shoot us with your words. You may cut us with your eyes. You may kill us with your hatefulness, but still, like air, will rise.
Does our sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that we dance like we've got diamonds at the meeting of our thighs?
Out of the huts of history's shame, we rise.
Up from a past that's rooted in pain, we rise.
We are a Black ocean,
leaping and wide,
welling and swelling.
We bear the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. We rise
into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. We rise,
bringing the gifts that our ancestors gave.
We are the dream and the hope of the slave.
We rise.
We rise. We rise.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Gloria and Maya.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you again for having us.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to go into our discussion. I will yield the floor to Dr. Ramona Houston.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Thank you, Dr. Karen Kossie-Chernyshev, for bringing us together today in terms of having this wonderful discussion about the experience of Black women on historically Black college and universities campuses. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm Ramona Houston. I bring you greetings from Atlanta. I'm a scholar, speaker, and social impact strategist, and also host of the Empowerment Zone podcast. I am a product of a historically Black college and university, and I have also been a former professor at an HBCU, Morehouse College, which is the only HBCU devoted to educating, nurturing, and developing Black men. And so it is my first time being able to have a discussion among Black women about our experiences at HBCUs. And so I am actually delighted to be here. We have a great panel here today. Thank you, Dr. Gloria Baptiste Roberts, and you ladies, Gloria Ezeki and Maya Williams, for that wonderful presentation. And we're excited to have these panelists here today. We have a number of them, and I'm going to read their bios, and then we're going to get right to the discussion. We have Dr. Kalita Nicholas Fairfax, who is in her 21st year as a professor of social work at the Honors College Senior. She's an Honors College Senior Fellow, and an inaugural faculty scholar in the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. And she has written several books and articles. She earned her doctorate of philosophy and her master's of arts in African American studies at Temple University. And she's also a graduate of Rutgers and an HBCU, Howard University. We have Dr. Leslie Tate, who is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, also an HBCU graduate, Texas Southern University, and the University of Houston. Welcome, Dr. Tate. Her work is centered on African cultural influence in American society, and she's also written several books and articles. We have Francille, Dr. Francille Rusan Wilson of the University of Southern California. She is an intellectual and labor historian, another historian, whose research examines the intersections between Black labor movements, Black social scientists, and Black women's history during the Jim Crow era. Dr. Wilson is an associate professor of American Studies and Ethnicity, History, and Gender and Sexuality Studies at the University of Southern California, and she has served as interim chair of Gender and Sexuality Studies. She has written several books and articles, among them, which we will most likely discuss today, is The Segregated Scholars, Black Social Scientists, and the Creation of Black Labor Studies. And it was awarded the 2007 Leticia Woods Brown Memorial Prize. She has a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and she studied at Harvard University, and she's a graduate also of Wellesley College. We have Dr. Michonne Benson, who is in English at Texas Southern University. She is an assistant professor and director of undergraduate English majors and minors at TSU, and a proud graduate of Jack Yates High School, which is also in Houston. She's a native of Houston, and she's been an educator for over 25 years, teaching high school English and serving as a middle school principal before arriving at TSU. We have Dr. Faith Jackson with us today as well. We have Dr. Merlene Peachtree. I am a historian, and Dr. Peachtree is one of those people that all of the historians in Texas look up to, no matter if you're Black or white. She's been the first, actually, African-American president of Texas, the Texas State Historical Association, and she became the editor of the African American Handbook of Texas. She has worked as an administrator and professor at Texas Southern University. She is a graduate of an HBCU, Southern University, and I didn't know you were a graduate of Atlanta University too. So that's my school, and Temple University. So welcome, Dr. Peachtree. As always, it's a pleasure to be in your midst. Dr. Alvia Wardwell, she's the curator of the Biggers Museum at Texas Southern University, and she is a professor at Texas Southern University in art history in the Department of Visual and Performing Arts at Texas Southern. And she's a trustee of Wellesley College as well, and we're happy to have her here. And then we have Dr. Edith Wu, who has attended the University of Houston Law School in Houston, Texas, and currently she's at the Thurgood Marshall School, and we're happy to have her here as well. So we have some distinguished ladies here to discuss their experience at an HBCU. Welcome, everyone. So we just have a short moment to have a discussion. And so we hope, although you are scholars, and that you will be brief in your answers. I always say that because you know how we scholars are. We can go on and on. And so I hope that you will be brief in your answers so that we can make sure that everybody can contribute to this discussion, and that we can have a really good debate about our experience at HBCU. So the first question I would like to ask the entire panel, and I'll go according to on my screen who I see. I'll call on you so that we can all have a minute to talk. But could you please first expand upon your decision to teach at an HBCU, and how do you feel about that decision? Could we start with Dr. Michonne Benson?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to be a part of this panel. I decided to teach at an HBCU because my experience had been, I was a granddaughter of grandparents who graduated from HBCUs. I taught secondary high school. I taught high school at a historically Black high school in the city of Houston. And although my parents had offered me opportunities to go to private schools in high school and middle school, and I valued those experiences very much, I realized the real benefit that I had personally attending historically Black institutions, and wanted to continue that experience, offering that to my students. So applying for employment at Texas Southern was a very conscious decision. It was a deliberate decision. And I've been back since 2014 this time, but it's not the first time that I've taught here. So I keep coming back to be a bridge between what I perceive as my extended community and this wonderful learning institution.
Thank you, Dr. Benson. Dr. Fairfax, what made you decide to teach at an HBCU?
So I'm at Norfolk State University, and full disclaimer, I'm speaking from my experiences and not representing Norfolk State University. I saw my role as engaged in race work. And for those of us who come through the applied social science tradition of what is now called social work, I saw my role as continuing the social reform tradition in our community to be involved in intellectual stimulation, engagement, and then practical application of knowledge back within the community. And I believe that serving at an HBCU could provide me with a vehicle to do that. And so I've been able to do that kind of work, but I do wish that many HBCUs would pay more attention to their leadership roles within community and not only see themselves as degree granting institutions.
Yes. It's extremely important that HBCUs also be involved in community engagement and outreach. Thank you, Dr. Fairfax. Dr. Wardlaw. Could you please unmute yourself?
Greetings to my sister scholars. This is an interesting question because in many ways I feel I was predestined to teach at an HBCU. I literally grew up on the campus of Texas Southern. Prior to coming to Houston with my family, we lived across the street from Morehouse, Spelman, and Atlanta University. So HBCUs have just been a part of my existence. And my father taught here at Texas Southern for over 60 years. So I just have the HBCU experience in my blood. And I feel that it is so important that we are here and mentor the next generation of scholars, especially our younger sisters.
Thank you, Dr. Wardlaw. A legacy amongst our midst, HBCU legacy. Thank you very much. Dr. Marlene Peachtree.
When I was in graduate school, I heard Vincent Harding speak of the responsibility of a Black scholar.
Mm-hmm.
The responsibility of a Black scholar was to go back to your community, train individual, and also be a participant in that community. So with that in mind, I decided that I wanted to teach in an HBCU, but I had a caveat to that. I was not going to an HBCU if it was off the beaten path. I come from a hick town in Louisiana and I was not going back to another one. So, but there were enough HBCUs that was located on the beaten path. And I decided that if I'm gonna make a difference, then I must train the student and I must be a participant in the community.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peachtree. Dr. Tate, how would you answer the question? What do you feel about your decision to teach at an HBCU, and how did you arrive at an HBCU?
Well, like Dr. Wardlaw, I come from a family of educators. So I kind of grew up between TSU's campus and Purview's campus. My uncle taught history at Purview for 50 years. And so he kind of groomed us for this. And it's funny, having attended, a mainstream university and then getting my master's from TSU and then going back to a mainstream university. I'm thankful for the female sisterhood because after I'd finished my requirements, I returned, and when I went back to TSU, they welcomed me with open arms. I feel like I have an obligation. I have an obligation to educate and mentor young Black students and to prepare them for the outside world. So I remember one time I was asked in one of my classes why, I was there. And I remember the old hymn, "A charge to keep I have." And so I just think of that hymn, and that's why I'm back.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Dr. Edith Wu, would you like to answer the question? I don't see you, but I think you're here.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. I went to a PWI undergrad. I went to TSU for the JD. And I'm just going to speak these names: Dr. Karen Kossie, Dr. Bishan Benson, Dr. Petrie, Dr. Wardlaw, Dr. Faith Jackson, Dr. Hawkins, Dr. Baptiste, and Dr. Melanson as well. That's why I teach at a HBCU, because of these women like these, strong African-American women. That's why I teach at a HBCU.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wu. Dr. Hawkins or Dr. Roberts, would you like to contribute to the discussion at all? Dr. Roberts, you're muted.
I'm just loving having this discussion, and I did not know that I would actually be a part of it, but I can see no other position in my career but to teach at HBCU. I am a former president of the National Association of Black Social Workers, and it was so good to see you, Dr. Khalida. We've worked together, and we know each other through the Black Social Workers. But I think that just like Dr. Petrie said, that giving back to the community, I also read Vincent Harding as well, and other scholars who indicated, and family indicated, that we must give back. And so I wanted to be with people who looked like me. And Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine helped me to be there. I read about TSU in a Jet Magazine, and I said, "Oh, they're doing it." It was involved in a sit-in and a riot. So I thought they are giving back to community.
And as for me, I know that I wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for an HBCU. Lemoyne College in Memphis, Tennessee is where my parents met. My mother came from the cotton fields of Arkansas, and in those same fields, after she fainted and passed out from the heat, her job was to cook for the family. But prior to that, her grandmother taught children, sharecropper children, under the trees in those Arkansas cotton fields. And when she made it to Memphis, Tennessee, and met my father, whose father whose father worked in a snuff factory in Memphis, they just believed in education as a road up. They knew that if they could just get there, they could get elsewhere in their lives, and they taught us to believe in that. And so that's why ultimately I came to an HBCU. And but I was advised upon coming that it could be detrimental to my research career, to my professional career. I was told this by my advisors at MIT, at Harvard. I was even told this by my pastor's wife, whose son had actually graduated from Texas Southern. And she told me as I was coming, TSU, you'd be good for TSU, but I don't know how good TSU may be for you, because it's hard work in the vineyards, right? And so that's where we've been, but it's been rewarding work as well. And that's why we stay.
Thank you, Dr. Hawkins. And finally, Dr. Francille Rusan Wilson, could you answer the question, please, about your how did you arrive at a HBCU and your decision to teach at one?
Well, what I would say is, first I want to thank the organizers and my sister scholars. I would say that my work around historically Black colleges is to bring forth the history of them. I am a product of Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, where my parents met. And in my own academic career, I've taught at predominantly white universities, but their experience has led me to really value what happens at a historically Black university. And of course, when I went to segregated schools in St. Louis County, Missouri, and later went to Wellesley College, I really knew that my friends that went to they weren't historically Black then. They were Negro colleges. They were just our schools, that they had a different and often a more richer experience than Professor Wardlaw and I had at Wellesley College. So I've dedicated my own career to looking at the experiences of Black faculty at HBCUs, and you know, I happen to marry a man is a fourth generation Howard person, and you know, so I think that, and my son attended Morehouse, so sometimes we feel like there's a split between the predominantly white and Black colleges, and I think that that is a false kind of notion. There are different reasons that I haven't had the opportunity to teach at an HBCU, but I feel very close to all of them, and of course do research at many of them.
Thank you very much. And we hope that we'll have time to expand on at the end of the conversation a little bit about what your research has revealed about the experiences of faculty members on HBCU campuses. You know, you talking about being integration baby. My parents were integration babies, and they always say that's one of the things they envied, is that they did not have the opportunity to attend an HBCU like my siblings and I did. And so, yes, we do live in these mixed families. And what the themes that are coming up in the conversation is that we are legacies. Many of us decide to attend because our parents and grandparents and others in our families attended. Also, we have the social responsibility aspect, which many of you expanded upon, about being the commitment to community and being race women who are interested in uplifting and representing the community and making sure that we pass on knowledge, gifts, and talents, and that memory of the African-American community. And also just the importance of expanding upon the legacies of the people who came before you and continuing that great tradition of education in the African-American community. So thank you all for sharing all of your stories. I am from a small town called Brownwood, Texas, and my introduction to HBCUs was being able to attend that Prairie View and Southern game growing up that was in Dallas, Texas at the Cotton Bowl. And so that was the first time I got to see HBCUs, and I was like, I'm going there. But I ended up going to school in Atlanta. So it is great to hear about how all of us arrived at an HBCU campus. So I want to ask a twofold question among you scholars about the challenges of attending an HBCU. And also, what do you see as the solution to that challenge? A lot of times we talk about the problem so much. We talk about all the different things that we don't like about HBCUs, but with every problem, there's a solution, right? So can we talk about what challenges you're experiencing at HBCUs specifically as an African-American woman? And what do you think some of the solutions could be in addressing that challenge? Thank you for being brief in your previous questions, and we hope you will be brief in this long extended question as well this time around. Can we start with Dr. Tate this time? Dr. Tate, what are some or one challenge that you think women are experiencing on HBCU campuses, and what is the solution?
That's a good question. One is money for research, especially if you're in the humanities. And the other, even on HBCU campuses, as a woman, we are in the minority still. Oh, I know I am. I'm the only female in my history department. So, so there are challenges, there. So, I think for me, those are the number two challenges.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Dr. Wardlaw, could you please unmute?
Okay. I want to echo my friend Dr. Tate's response, because I had written down funding, resources, and time. And I think, and the other is perceptions of HBCUs beyond our own community. So first, funding, we never have enough money to do all of the projects that we're interested in completing and creating. We're mindful of being imaginative in our resources. I learned that from Dr. John Biggers, who was the chair of our department, that you just have to make a way in some way. If they didn't have clay in the art department, he and Professor Sims drove out to San Antonio and dug up some and brought it back. We don't have enough time because we're pulled in so many different directions in terms of all of the research that we want to do. You mentioned that balance between my creative side and my academic side. That is always a challenge. But that perception is something that we're constantly pushing back against. And I look at a mentor to me on this campus was Dr. Thomas F. Freeman, as he was to so many, and what Dr. Freeman did for our students. And now Dr. Roberts is continuing in that legacy. We have incredible students, and we produce incredible professionals. Given that opportunity, they can be anywhere at any time. So it is that determination that I'm passionate about. So challenges become motivations.
Thank you, Dr. Wardlaw. Same question, Dr. Fairfax.
Yes, ma'am. And very similar to Dr. Wardlaw, I grew up on a campus, HBCU campus. My father was dean of the School of Theology at Virginia Union University, and Mama finished Virginia State University. We have a big rival in the Commonwealth of Virginia between those schools. And so I saw Daddy not only fulfill his responsibilities as an academician and as a professor and as a writer, but I saw him very much in the community, serving on boards, working with and to develop lay leadership. And part of my challenge, and again, I'm just speaking from my experience, is that I wish I saw more professors at HBCUs engaged in community development and lay leadership development, and being involved with knowledge projects and developing families and communities. I think that's vitally important. And then Dr. Houston, I really struggle a bit with the lack of onboarding of white faculty at HBCUs. And so we have, I think we should not assume that just because you're a white faculty person at an HBCU that you're progressive or you're liberal. I think there needs to be a much more properly socialization process for white faculty at HBCUs, because they miss many things.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your remarks. Dr. Benson, what are some of the challenges? Pick one. You look like you could say a whole bunch of them. And then what are the solutions?
Okay, well, I applaud Dr. Fairfax because this is the second very candid response that she has offered, and I'm not sure that I'm going to delve as deeply as she has in this response. But in the time that I've been at Texas Southern as a faculty member, I have experienced certainly a number of students who have been driven by college culture that they saw since elementary school to go to college. but they have not perceived an HBC or their HBCU as their education destination. They feel as though the HBCU is someplace that they ended up. And so the challenge for me has been to convince them that this is exactly where they're supposed to be. Not because they have skill deficits or, they bought into the myth, somewhat requires some qualification, of the achievement gap, but that they have really believed that they're there just to get by until they can go to someplace where they're destined to be. So that's one of the core challenges. And I think that a remedy to that is in the active recruiting. Prairie View recruited me from Jack Yates when I was a senior. And although they didn't give me a scholarship, and UT did, UT Austin did, and my parents wanted me to go to UT Austin, I was able to spend some time in the engineering program at Prairie View. And I'm going to tell you, had I really been more focused on what I was supposed to do when I got to college, and had I had the support of family members who actually perceived Prairie View as a equal opportunity as the University of Texas, then I would have gone to Prairie View and would have done very well as an engineer, or whatever I would have become. So I just think that public information, I think that was, I can't remember who said that, but spreading the message in the general public about the strength of the HBCU is really important, because that will then trickle down or over into high schools and land on the right folks who are going to get here and value this opportunity for what it is.
Thank you, Dr. Benson. Dr. Wu.
I think that it's support. I did, and we wrote a little blurb for Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev that talked about some of the stalwart professors who were here when we started. You can see that Faith Jackson is also in this because we're using the same phone. But it's just the support, and I did get some support, but I see how important support was for me. And I think that's one thing that a lot of the sister scholars don't get. And so I think that that's what compelled me to push it forward. So I just think the support that we have to give to each other at a HBCU is one of the most critical pieces to teaching.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Dr. Jackson, would you like to add to the conversation?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much. And just a little background. I'm a second generation graduate of Xavier University in New Orleans, which is the only Black Catholic university in the Western Hemisphere. And my husband is a Texas Southern graduate, and I have a son that's going to be going off to Tuskegee in the fall. So we really are strong supporters of HBCUs. I think one of the biggest challenge, there's so much you have to do and the time to do it. And also what you have to do as far as substantively with your career, that you don't get a chance to interact with your female colleagues as much as you would like. I think I don't know if it was Kossie or Hawkins brought it up, is that to recognize that your colleagues are going through the same thing that you are going through. And if we just had a moment to sit back and drink some coffee and tea and express ourselves to each other and say, hey, you know what? I've gone through that as well, or I'm going through that. And one thing Dr. Wu and I have often talked about is that not only do you need to have a mentor, you need to have a sponsor. Mm-hmm. And we talked to our female students at the law school about this. A mentor is great. And I think it has to be organic. I think it's hard to, I know sometimes we try to force it, but I think it has to be more organic. But also you have to have someone that when you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and you've done, cross your T's and dot your I's, and now it's time for a promotion or to be elevated in some way. And all of a sudden people forget what you've done, that you have to have a sponsor who looks like you for the most part, that's going to get on the table and pound the fist and say, this person has done this. They've done everything we've told them to do. And so what is the problem now? So I think that's a challenge. And I think that because we're all doing our own thing and we're operating by ourselves, that you forget that, hey, we're stronger in unity. We're stronger when we're together. And I think that this opportunity, just to have this meeting webinar, this dialogue, I think it's great, even for those who are on our way out. You know, we're reaching out to those who have just started. What can we do? But there is nothing like the HBCU experience, whether you are a student or you're on the other side as a professor or administrator. There's nothing to compare it to. It's a lot that goes with it, but it's all worth it in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Petrie.
I think one of the challenges is selling fund. Two of the challenges, selling the university and funding. The perception of many HBCU is that we don't have the resources, we're not doing the kind of work that other universities are doing, which is not the case. In many instances is that we are not selling, our public relations office is not selling what we've done. And since we have to, we live in a multicultural society, therefore we have many Black scholars who would come to HBCU, but because of the perception that they have seen or heard, and that we don't have anybody pushing the kind of research or the kinds of things that we're doing, they shy away. For example, just this morning, we heard that Dr. Bullock will be on the Environmental Justice Council to President Biden. That need to be highlighted so that we would have more people wanting to come to Texas Southern.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie. And your second challenge was about funding. What is your funding in terms of research or funding of the institution? What aspect of funding?
Both funding, but in terms of research and attending conferences, most of the conferences I've attended, I've paid myself. And that depends on many years. Because if you come here as a junior scholar, you don't have the money to pay for every conference that you would like to attend. So I think we need more funding.
And what's the solution to that, Dr. Petrie?
Well, the solution to that has to do with getting more students so that the university receive more funding.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Petrie. And Dr. Rusan Wilson, from your research, I kind of want to change the question for you in terms of the HBCU experience, but the faculty experience at HBCU. What are some of the conclusions that you have come through your research?
Thank you. I want to echo a lot of the things that have been said, and I don't know if it is good or bad that the first 3 Black women who earned PhDs 100 years ago had many of the same experiences. In fact, coincidentally, today is the 155th birthday, the anniversary of the 155th birthday of Dr. Georgiana Simpson, who was the first Black woman to receive a PhD, which she got in German languages and literature on June 14th, 1921. And 10 days ago marked the 100th anniversary of when Dr. Eva Beatrice Dykes passed all of her exams at Radcliffe College for her degree in English literature. She was awarded that degree on June 22nd. So she seemed to be the 3rd Black woman to get a PhD, but she was actually the first to finish all of her requirements. And then in 1921 and until the mid-50s, any woman that went to Harvard had their degree said Radcliffe College. So she should be listed in the Black PhDs of Harvard College. I think she's probably the 4th or 5th after Du Bois, Woodson, and Elaine Locke. So, and then on the 15th of June, Sadie Moselle, but Sadie, we know her as Sadie Tanner Moselle Alexander, got a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in economics. not one of those three women was able to get a job at a HBCU. And Sadie's grandfather, Bishop Tanner, was a trustee at Howard. And Sadie and Eva had grown up on Howard's campuses. And here, Howard did not have anyone on their faculty, Black or white, that had PhDs in the areas that they had. It wasn't until Howard finally got a Black president that Simpson and Dykes were hired to teach at Howard. Alexander, who had a PhD in economics from the Wharton School, and we know what that would be worth today, got so frustrated she couldn't get a job anywhere. She could have worked as an elementary school teacher in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. Black women weren't even hired to teach in high school. She didn't get a PhD at age 23 from Penn to teach in an elementary school. She ended up going to law school and never worked as an academic. So what they have in common is that they had difficulty finding academic jobs. When they got academic jobs, they were not paid the same as men. And they often had little support from administration. And there was the assumption that Black women who taught in HBCUs, as well as high school 100 years ago, would stay single. And that wasn't something that Alexander chose to do. So the world got a great civil rights lawyer, but lost the chance to have a wonderful economist. We don't know what she would have done if she had been at an HBCU. So I think that part of the lesson, by the 40s, more Black women were hired at HBCUs, but they still struggled under the idea that they should stay single, that they shouldn't be paid as much, and other kinds of sexism, as Merce Tate and Marion Thompson Wright joined the history department at Howard. And there are just so many stories. But what I would like to say is that all of these women persisted and were amazing and wonderful scholars that, as well as people in English like Otelia Cromwell. They founded many of our organizations like the College Language Association, the Association for Social Sciences in Negro colleges, and many other organizations. They held up the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. So, it is, I think, the story of our sister scholars in the past and in the present is a story of persistence and a story of overcoming both racism and sexism and low expectations. And we still do that. And it's not that different for those of us at predominantly white colleges. People are often asking me why I'm, who would take an African American history course, and like a lot of people would take an African American history course. So and we feel often as isolated. I think that what I like about this webinar is that we're able to see that everyone, you think when you start teaching at the university level, there will be this wonderful ability to see and be with other scholars, and the actual work means that we're often isolated, and even within our departments, we don't get to talk to each other about what they're doing. And we do need to stop, because it's refreshing and fulfilling. I've tried in my own time to learn something about art history, because that's what Dr. Wardlaw does. And since we met each other as college freshmen, you know, I have been able to learn so much from her. And I think that the more we see and talk to each other about what we're doing, the more exciting our own work can be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rusan Wilson, for giving us that history about the experiences of African American women scholars, and more so the importance of our persistence in making sure that we create opportunities for ourselves and other people, particularly women in the academy. We have several challenges that we have talked about as women in the academy: money for research, funding, resources, and time, the perceptions of HBCUs, more professional involvement in the community, the lack of onboarding for white faculty, seeing HBCUs as a destination, support to the lack of support, selling our universities, and funding for various opportunities such as research and attending professional meetings and conferences. One thing that wasn't mentioned that I was kind of surprised about is pay equity. I know that was an issue that we were dealing with at Morehouse College between the men and the women. So we have a lot of challenges. However, there are solutions to every challenge, and these scholars have mentioned some of the solutions. We have to increase our representation in various departments. We have to be imaginative about our resources. We need to continue to produce scholars. We have to embrace people in the socialization process, be involved in active recruiting. Mentorship and sponsorship is so important. And we have to, as HBCUs, have to sell what we have done and what we have produced. And I agree with, I think it was Dr. Wu who stated, or Dr. Jackson, one of the two stated, there is nothing like an HBCU. There is nothing like that experience.
That was Dr. Jackson.
Thank you,
You're
Dr.
absolutely
Jackson.
right.
Get your credit. There is nothing like an HBCU. I know one of my colleagues, when I was attending Clark Atlanta University, he said he went home for Christmas and everybody was telling him about how their college experience was. He said, I don't care where you went to college. There is nothing like attending college in the Atlanta University Center. So Dr. Jackson, thank you for that statement. But more so, we're happy or we're proud, extremely proud as African-American scholars that we can take the average student at HBCUs and make them representatives of their fields. We do wonders at HBCUs because we are master educators. And so we want to thank everybody who participated, all you women scholars. I hope that we will stay in touch and stay connected and continue to support each other in our work. Thank you so much, Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev, for bringing us together in order that we can have this valuable conversation, because we have to do a lot to make sure that we continue to produce African-American scholars, and that many of those scholars find HBCUs as their destination. As one of our scholars has stated, that we want you at HBCUs because we need you to continue this that legacy. Dr. Benson, take your credit. Thank you very much. Thank you. I turn it over to you, Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev.
Thank you so much for this outstanding discussion. Now, what I'd like for us to do is leave with some practical information that Natasha Savage is going to share with us today. So I'm going to yield the floor to her, and she's going to talk to us about Title IX.
There we go. Okay, wouldn't let me unmute myself for a second. Hello. My name is Natasha Savage Hubbard, and I am the Deputy Title IX Coordinator here at TSU. I've been at TSU since November of 2020. One thing I'm very excited about is that I also graduated from an HBCU. I graduated from the Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi. I graduated twice. I got my bachelor's and my master's from Jackson State. I also went to a PWI afterwards, and you guys are right. There's nothing like an HBCU experience. I'm a product of an HBCU. I'm a product of teachers taking somebody that came from seemingly nowhere and being allowed to propel them. You all have almost brought me to tears today. I'm so emotionally overcome by just being able to be in your presence today. Neither one of my parents went to college, and HBCU was my first choice. And at first, I thought it was because I didn't have the skills and I didn't go to college right away. But once I got there, I was made to feel like I belong and that I could achieve anything. I now hold 3 degrees and a certification in education. I also am certified as a civil rights investigator, which is why I work in Title IX now. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of information. So like I said, I work in Title IX. We have 3 people that work in our office. The Title IX coordinator, Bobby Brown. I'm the Deputy Title IX coordinator. And then we also have a Title IX investigator, Talia Verone. Our location is in Hannah Hall, and that's our phone number at the bottom. What we do is we want to educate our peers and our scholars on what conduct is prohibited at TSU under Title IX. We just want to make our students and our faculty and staff aware. And so we have quite a few webinars coming up. So those are the dates. If you need them again, you can definitely email me or give me a call, and I can give you the webinar and send you the link. The one that we're really focusing on is our trauma-informed techniques, in which we're teaching faculty and staff how to respond to somebody that has been a victim of some type of traumatic event, whether it be rape or stalking or harassment. We're doing that in conjunction with 2 former deputies that have 40 years of experience in higher education as well as law enforcement. And that will be April the 21st, and it's from 9 to 12. You can click the link to join. If you need the flyer, if you need the link, I'm more than happy to send that out for you. And that was pretty much the end of my presentation. I just wanted to give you all a little bit information, but once again, I'm so overcome and I'm so joyous. Like, I had to fight back tears for the first couple of minutes, which is why I kept kind of looking off, because I was like, oh, I don't want them seeing me crying on camera. But you all are so impressive and I'm so excited. And for me to be allowed to sit here and to hear what you all have gone through and your commitment to service, it only drives what I'm doing in Title IX. And it makes me want to be even more of a service person. It makes me want to get involved in the Third Ward. I'm not from Texas. I've only been here for about 4 years. I'm originally from Mississippi. And so community service was the backbone of my education at Jackson State. And so I just have been so invigorated by today. So I just want to let you all know that if you feel like you haven't touched anybody, you got me today. So I was so excited.
How awesome. There's nothing like a fresh, vibrant testimony, right?
Yes,
Thank
definitely.
you so much. Thank you. I appreciate your sharing. So we're going to, I want to remind you that we do have a symposium coming up November 8th, Monday, November 8th. We're keeping with the same theme, but scholars will be able to present papers. They will have had time to write out more extensive comments or share research related to Black women on the campus, on HBCU campuses. So we really invite you to look at the call for papers that we're going to send out. But before we close, before we leave, I want to welcome Thomas Melanson, Professor Melanson, to share with us the poem that he has written for this event.
Thank you. You can everyone hear me? I want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Rise. Yes. In Swahili, inuka means to rise. Stories untold and exile on underfunded islands. Research arrested with slave mouth locks for speaking in a woman's tongue, truth. Rise, Inuka. To rise is to ascend, even with Jim Crow in the doorway, even with polite, benevolent sexism, even with women's coffee room assignments. Rise. And you have, above attempts to amputate your voice, silence your wings, lynch your songs to the sound of Dixie. Rise. Above attempts to mute your research, feminize your objective data, sexualize your scholarship, but you rise still, teaching in the Ebony Towers, cultivating young Black seeds in the garden. Oh, this great tower has gardens. HBCUs are our gardens in the tower. Scholars, you have planted and harvested these African violets and daisies and orchids in this tower with your genius. Bold fists, refusal to surrender to the misogynist winking eye. Inuka, rise and you have. When you rise, we all rise. Inuka, Inuka, rise.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that. What an awesome time we spent together, and I look forward to the one-day symposium in November. I want us to end like with any good educational experience. You don't have a test, but we do have a poll that we want you to complete. There are 10 questions to the poll, and so all of us were able to answer those 10 questions. And if you would be so kind as to answer poll questions, I would greatly appreciate it. Raise your hand when you complete the poll. Raise your electronic hand.
Dr. Kossie-Chernyshev, I only see the questions 1 through 3.
You can slide. Can you slide? There should be a little bar to the left, the right, excuse me, that allows you to slide down.
I tried to do that, and for some reason, I have an old computer, so I'm at home.
Okay.
I even tried to push it up, but it's
okay.
So I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you download the poll from your computer? Because that is an option as well.
I don't see the poem.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, you wanted us to write a poem?
No, the poll.
Oh, the poll. No, I can't, I don't see it beyond 3.
Okay.
And
okay.
I don't know. Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Okay. I just wanted, again, a show of hands of everyone who's been able to take it, because I see 12 out of 29 people have, 41% have. Okay.
Can you resend it, Doc?
Letting me submit.
I finished mine, but Faith Jackson is not able to pull hers up.
She's not able to, okay.
No, I was about to send you in the chat room. I can't pull it up.
Okay, well, we will, what I can do is download it and send it that way.
Okay, because I'd like
we
to complete it. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to complete it too. It's only allowing me to see the questions, but I can't select anything.
Okay, okay, thank you for letting me know. So what I'll do is create a Survey Monkey kind of poll, and that way we can get all of the answers, because we do have 12 people were able to complete it. Okay, so I'm just going to share the results of those who you see the results.
You got it. Okay.
Well, no, I got the poll results. I can see the results.
Right. So I just did the results based on people who were able to respond. So more out of the 12 who did respond, 58% attended an HBCU, either as an undergraduate, post-bac, or graduate student. Of course, well, 67% those who responded are now teaching at an HBCU. We have kind of most, let's see, 1 to 5 years, 42% of us have been, so we have someone who's taught more than 40 years. Let's clap, clap, clap.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Everybody, 75% of us, teaching at an HBCU was your first choice. So most of us are very deliberate about our decision. 5, were you mostly encouraged or discouraged? Most were encouraged of this group. Okay. Number 6, how do you feel about your decision to teach at an HBCU? So some have mixed feelings. Right at half feel great about it, and then 1 answered neutral. Which of the following would most enhance your HBCU faculty experience? Now, no one mentioned a salary during the conversation, but that is concern, right? And we see the results for the other questions as well. Number 8, which of the following do you believe has posed the greatest challenge for you as a woman, gender? Okay, it's the biggest. And then 9, if you had the opportunity to teach at another institution, would you choose an HBCU? That's awesome. So despite the challenges, most would select HBCU. And then 10, 100% of you believe that having this conversation is important. So this is encouraging. It means that we definitely do need to have the symposium in the fall. We will send out the call for papers again with relevant deadlines. But I want to thank each of you, all of our panelists, for attending and for sharing with our audience. And I also want to thank all of our attendees who listened in on this very important conversation. And still, we rise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I will end our afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.